Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hi, and welcome to another Let's Talk Divorce conversation. Now, I was reading an article just the other day on the Huffington Post where they spoke about how signs of narcissism can sometimes be a little more nuanced and not always as obvious as media would have you believe. And in another article, the Harvard Medical School mentions how, in spite of lots of research and public interest in the narcissistic personality, it's still less clear how narcissists may actually differ from the average Joe conversationally. So that said, if you are someone who is leaving a spouse who shows even some of the symptoms of being a narcissist, then my guest today has some fascinating insights surrounding the topic of divorcing a narcissist. You may even recognize him from his many TV appearances discussing legal issues on CNN's Headline News, Politic King with Larry King, Fox News Video, I-24 News, The Law and Crime Network, Court TV and other leading media outlets. And he's often called upon as one of New Jersey's leading family law attorneys, mediators and litigators because of his unique approach to helping men going through the process of divorcing a narcissistic spouse. Well, it sounds like my guest has a lot to share with us today, so let's not keep him waiting a moment longer. Author of the Amazon best-selling book, How to Survive and Thrive When Divorcing a Narcissist, let's welcome him to the show, ladies and gentlemen, attorney Brad Micklin. Brad, are you there?
Yes, thanks for having me, Stewart.
Good. So before we get started with our first question, Brad, could you just take a moment just to make it absolutely clear that anything you share with us today is not any form of therapeutic advice, legal advice, or even legal assistance? It's purely for the purpose of sharing information.
Exactly. This is more of like an advice and a counseling type of talk session, but for people suffering with these issues, dealing with these individuals, you really need to look to specific therapists or counselors that will meet your needs. Legal matters, you need to research your own jurisdiction and maybe meet with an attorney or two in there so you can make sure that the law still applies. So today we're going to be talking just more of the general aspects and characteristics that people will be dealing with.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Brad. So as I mentioned in the Huffington Post, signs of narcissism are not always obvious, and the Harvard Medical School said it's still less clear how narcissists may differ from the average Joe conversationally. Now, it sounds to me like figuring out whether your spouse is narcissistic or not can be a lot of work. And if that's the case, then Brad, what signs should the listener be looking out for?
Well, there are a lot of signs that a reader or listener should be looking out for. And the problem is not just that the conduct or behaviors aren't recognized by others, but sometimes the spouse or the individual doesn't recognize it because they've been with this person for such a long time. So you need to look for very common, very strong personality characteristics. Most commonly, narcissists will have lack of responsibility for negative outcomes in their lives. They will often project or gaslight their own negative behavior onto others or blame others for it. More often than not, they have a lot of troubled relationships, especially close ones like family and friends. So if you see these characteristics, more than one or two of them, then you probably should be recognized that you are dealing with a narcissist, or somebody at least that has narcissistic tendencies and possibilities.
So I've heard you say somewhere on one of your shows that divorcing a narcissist is a lot like war. So before we start talking about preparing oneself for court, what does the listener need to know about the inevitable court battle that will take place once their proceedings begin to unfold?
I'd like the listeners to know that there's a significant lack of familiarity with narcissists or narcissistic behavior in litigation. Most people think, or at least those that are involved with narcissists or high conflict litigation and divorces, they think it's common. They think that's what you expect in a divorce is high conflict, but it's really not that common. The narcissist is the aberration, and you need to realize that people are going to need to be educated from beginning to end to really understand what you've been going through.
So, Brad, courtroom battles, let's talk about that for a moment. these battles are where narcissists divert most of their energies. They are relentless in their pursuit of custody rights and sometimes brutal when trying to defeat claims for support. They typically come out with the most outrageous positions and support them with equally shocking lies. Now, why do you feel that it's important for the listener to know this when facing the inescapable court battles that come with divorcing a narcissistic spouse?
I think it's important for people to realize this because they need good planning. And good planning doesn't just begin when the case starts and it doesn't end when the case is over. You need to plan before, you need to plan during it, and you need to plan afterwards. Otherwise, you're always going to be on the defensive. You need to have an idea where you're going in the beginning. You need to have professionals like attorneys and counselors and therapists in your corner beforehand. You want to speak to witnesses to make sure that they're going to be favorable and willing to involve themselves in the process. And you want to do this all before it unravels in front of you.
So the divorce process in New Jersey, Brad, we both know it can be intimidating for someone who is not involved with it on a day-to-day basis. Could you please share some of the steps which may help them to understand what to expect as their divorce moves through its various stages?
Well, there's a lot of things, and listeners need to understand that every case is going to be different, whether you're dealing with a narcissist or you're just dealing with high conflict or upset people. So there's certain things you always want to do in any given case. The first is you need to research your jurisdiction, both legal and practical aspects of your case. You need to know what is going to be happening and what you need to be prepared for before it actually comes to it. You also want to speak with professionals about each stage as the stages unfold. You don't want to just wait until your case begins to speak with an attorney. You don't want to just wait until there's a custody battle to speak with a therapist. So you want to research these individuals long before you think you're going to need them. And lastly, probably most importantly, don't talk to other people that have been through the process, especially a divorce. Most people will share the horror stories, and not every story is actually a horror story. So you need to be able to separate somebody who might just be upset at a bad outcome and somebody that had a high conflict divorce case or a narcissist. So I always say stay away from friends and family.
Okay, these are some really great insights that you're sharing so far, Brad. So let's talk a little bit about your book, How to Survive and Thrive When Divorcing a Narcissist. Because in your book, you mentioned the 5 things that men should know when divorcing a narcissist. Now, can you just expand on that? What do you actually mean by those 5 things? What are they?
Well, the book was intended to give you as much information as possible, but be as concise and helpful as it could be. Mm-hmm. So instead of going through the deep history of the psychological issues and the psychological and psychiatric issues that you might be confronted, I tried to really just boil down the 5 most important, most basic issues you need to confront and face, because you need to be able not only to recognize these in the beginning, but again, as I keep saying, you need it throughout the process. You'll need it after the process. So by keeping just the 5 things in front of you at all times, you'll always be prepared for whatever may come up.
Okay, so I know we've spoken a little bit about the topics covered in your book, but what was it that led you to write it, and what do you want the reader to walk away with after reading it?
Well, the first thing that interested me and continues to confuse me about narcissists and the legal process, and the one thing I want people to take from this and listeners to bring with them, is the unfamiliarity that everybody will have in this process. And I don't mean just judges, but therapists, counselors, attorneys. They almost always act as if people are coming forward and telling the truth and being honest and being cooperative. So when you're dealing with a narcissist who, as you mentioned earlier, may commonly create outrageous, egregious lies, they're going to be believed, and you're going to often be on the defensive. So as I learned more and more about the behavior and I saw how prevalent it actually is in litigation, I became even more surprised by how many people are unfamiliar with it. So you really need to be prepared to continuously remind all of your professionals, your attorneys, your counselors, your judges, of the conduct, of what you're going to expect to see in the future. You have to remind them of their bad behavior in the past. You have to bring it forward again so that it stays fresh in front of everybody's opinion. And it just continues to be surprising that it never seems to change. As more popular and widespread the term and the information becomes, the attitudes in the professional aspects and the courtroom battles, they don't change.
So, Brad, every time that you and I speak, I feel like we could go on for hours and hours and still not have even begun to scratch the surface of the insights that you have to share on the topic of divorcing a narcissist. However, we are out of time. So that said then, Brad, how and where can anyone find out more about you and get a copy of your book, how to survive and thrive when divorcing a narcissist?
Well, Stewart, I have and continue to produce a lot of information on this because it is such a widespread issue. So readers and listeners can always go to my website, which is micklinlawgroup.com. That's MICKLIN lawgroup.com, all one word. I have and continue to make daily videos on my YouTube page, which is Brad Micklin. And as you mentioned, you can find my book on Amazon.com.
Perfect. We'll ensure that all those links are on the website underneath your show. Well, that's it then, Brad. I'd just like to congratulate you once again on the launch of your Amazon best-selling book, and thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Stewart.
You're welcome. And before we both go, I'd also like to say a big thank you to you, our listener, because without you, we wouldn't have anyone to talk to. We'd be sat here twiddling our thumbs. So thank you again for joining us on this very insightful and informative conversation with one of the leading divorce attorneys in the Nutley, New Jersey area, Brad Micklin. Make sure you do check him out, ladies and gentlemen. Check out his website and his YouTube channel that he's alluded to. There are some great resources on there. And visit his author page on Amazon, where you'll be able to get more information on his latest book. So that's it. Again, I'm Stewart Andrew Alexander, and we'll be back shortly with some more leading divorce professionals in this, our series of Let's Talk Divorce Conversations. So until then, take care, have a great day, and we'll talk real soon.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.